So let's start with PayPal. So give us what is PayPal nowadays? You've got like a lot of brands, a lot of products. Give us a refresher.
Yeah, we have PayPal, we have Venmo, we have Honey, Braintree, Zoom, and on, right? But if you think about it, at the end of the day, it comes down to we're still kind of the largest payments provider in the world. We have about 30 million merchants on our platform. With about
30 million merchants.
30 million merchants, 400 million consumers. We see about 1/3 of all online transactions globally, which means we see much, much more data than a Walmart or one of my former employers, Amazon. So it's really incredible if you think about it, how much data we have access to. And I think the big point here is from an advertising perspective, we're sitting horizontally across all the merchants. We're not just seeing what happens on one single merchant, but again, across all the 30 million. And that makes us a really unique kind of proposition from a data perspective.
Right. And I think related to that, one of the challenges with this commerce media, retail media explosion has been fragmentation. From the buyer's perspective, they have to buy on a lot of retailers. From the seller's perspective, they have to get scale. So you said 50,000 merchants? Did I get that wrong? That's a lot of small ones also. So how did they...
30 million, yeah.
30 million. Sorry, I got confused with numbers. So what's PayPal doing, and what should that long tail of merchants be thinking about retail media?
Yeah. Maybe let me start kind of where we started from a PayPal advertising perspective, and then I kind of come to your question. So when we started about 1.5 years ago, the first question was, okay, we have now access to what we call the transaction graph, the data, right? How can we basically help, on the one hand, our consumers to see more relevant advertisement, but more importantly, how can we help our merchants with two things? The first one was, how can we help them to actually sell more? And secondly, what can we do to help them to better monetize their own eyeballs? How can we basically help them to build their own retail media business? And so what we started in the first year was answering the first question, how can we help them to sell more? By building out our own advertising business, both on PayPal and Venmo. We invested more into Honey. We went then international with the UK and Germany. We launched our offsite advertising business, leveraging the transaction graph in the form of PMPs. We then launched Storefront ads, which is basically the payment function comes into the creative itself, which then allows basically consumer to transact within the creative. And it was all about this kind of how can we help our advertisers to sell more? And then the second question was, okay, how can we actually, our merchants, aka advertisers, our merchants, how can we help them to better monetize their own eyeballs? And it comes now to your question. When we thought about that question, it became very obvious that all the big kind of retailers, they already have their own retail media businesses. But on our platform, we have millions of SMBs who do not have access to the opportunity to build their own retail media business because they're just too small, right?
Right.
And they don't have the expertise in-house, which means it creates for them a kind of a disadvantage in the ecosystem to compete with the big retailers. And that then brought us to the idea, okay, how about we basically bring all of our SMB merchants together and create a single unified advertising platform on their behalf, which is what we then launched 2 weeks ago, called the Ads Manager for our SMB businesses. And that now brings all the media together in one single buy. That from an advertiser perspective gives them the opportunity for the very first time to actually buy into media that was inaccessible in the past, audiences that were unreachable to them in the past. And on the other side, it enables our SMBs to, for the first time, actually earn money by monetizing the eyeballs on their own sites.
Right. And it's sort of an existential question because if you're competing with like a Walmart and they have that revenue stream and you don't, you're not going to be able to offer the same prices and advertise on Facebook or wherever you're advertising to get the customers. It all flows together if you don't have that media stream.
Exactly. I mean, think about it, whether Walmart or Amazon, how are they actually making money at the end of the day? It's less about selling products. It's more about selling eyeballs. Right. And if you don't have that second kind of arm, to your point, it's really hard for you to compete. Right. And so for us, it was the idea, okay, we help them to monetize eyeballs. We help them to make money, which they then can choose to reinvest into lower prices, more advertising, or maybe they just take a few more dollars home.
All right. So this long tail of merchants using PayPal for checkout, it must be kind of a real mixed bag of who they are, right? I've used PayPal to buy a T-shirt somewhere, or I think I used it for language translation services for a company. But like, how do you use a taxonomy? Do you use AI? How do you figure out how to monetize that long tail?
It's in a way, it's a very similar challenge to the open web, right? The open web is also kind of a mixed bag of many.
Right. The open web is a mixed bag. I think we'd all
have very different content, right? And in that sense, what basically we as a industry have done for the open web and making the open web kind of accessible and monetizable, the intention of PayPal is to do the same for our SMBs. We call it open commerce, right? And we will also build kind of our own verticals within the SMBs to really ensure that the eyeballs are relevant for the advertisers. Obviously, we can overlay our transaction data to really make sure the right users see the right ads on the right SMB website. So in that sense, the challenges from a technology perspective are not new to us as an industry, right? It's just the application is new in the sense of now we are applying it for a specific kind of area, retail, media SMBs, which have, again, been inaccessible in the past.
Do you think it's going to be harder necessarily than, say, a big retailer, or are you going to have to apply things like brand safety tools or other techniques to kind of get your arms around that huge amount of publishers?
I don't think it's really harder, because at the end of the day, from a consumer perspective, you're still in the same kind of mindset where your intention is to actually buy something, right? And we are basically using that intention to kind of help the merchants to steer that intention to the right products. And obviously then provide more value for the consumer. So I don't think it's anything different compared to a big retailer. But I would say that from an SMB perspective, and the ones that we spoke with, they're really, really excited about this opportunity to, again, get for the first time access to kind of this real huge budget. Everyone talks about retail media, everyone talks about commerce media, and yet they are left alone. And so for us, the pitch is very simple, which is we can basically help them first to earn money, and then secondly, we can help them to actually spend the money in a very efficient way.
Right. Let's talk about the demand side, spending the money. So in a typical retail media situation, it's the brands who sell their products on the retailer who are the first round of demand sources. So what's the dynamic in your world?
I mean, we have the same, right? For example, we have the same opportunity that advertisers, whether it's now on PayPal or Venmo, come for the same purpose, right? And obviously the same holds true for our SMB network. The advertisers at the end want to get where the consumers are, and where the consumers have this kind of moment where they are kind of want to spend money. Which is interesting for us, is pivoting it away for a second from an SMB perspective. We also have, as you know, Venmo as part of our PayPal family. And not only can advertisers get in front of a young audience, a Gen Z audience, but also an audience who's actually spending money, and they're spending money on Venmo, right? So they're in this mindset of spending money, then the mindset of spending money with friends. And if you then advertise in this environment, it's really, really interesting. And then you overlay that with all what we know about the Venmo users across Venmo usage, what emojis they share with each other based on the purchase behaviors, right? What they do on PayPal is really powerful from an advertiser perspective.
The Gen Z people love Venmo for some reason.
They do, yeah.
They just
they do, and it's great to see kind of what emojis they use, right? Whereas the pizzas, the Ubers, even real world gaming is a big topic on Venmo, where we send money back and forth, and it's a social phenomenon, right? And basically participating in that from an advertiser perspective is unique, differentiated, and very interesting.
Do you keep your Venmo feed public or private?
You can check it out.
What are there advertising products in Venmo right now?
Yeah.
What are they like?
They are indeed advertising products, and it's the whole conundrum. It's big retailers. It's even automotive companies advertise on Venmo. It's fashion. It's a big topic on Venmo. It's travel. Actually, in October, we were already sold out in terms of the real estate that we made available for advertisers. Yes.
Is that upper funnel kind of stuff?
It's upper funnel. It's above the fold. It's upper funnel, and we also have kind of another kind of interesting ad slot, which is after you send basically money to your friend, then it's kind of think of the post checkout environment. And it is. I must say I was really positively surprised how interested it is from an advertiser perspective to advertise on Venmo. I would have not expected it, but I was really positively surprised how much demand we actually have.
And what about Honey? So Honey, you acquired a couple of years ago at this point, sort of an affiliate model for the most part. So how is Honey participating in the retail media trend?
Yeah, I mean, Honey, we acquired, I think, something like four years ago.
Oh, really? That long?
And time is flying. And so Honey originally was all about how can we help merchants to basically nudge consumers to actually finalize a purchase on their website. And indeed, it's an affiliate program. But if you think about what we have with Honey is we have a tremendous amount of data because we know about consumers, not only what they actually purchase on a retail media website, no matter what payment methods to use. We also use it as a really strong data collection engine for purchase intent. Right, which means
it's got a lot of purchase intent.
We have a lot of purchase intent coming from Honey. On top of that, we have access to merchants' catalogs data. So we see about 80-90% of all catalog data in the US from across all the
89%?
80 to 90%.
Okay.
It's a massive amount of data, which has never been used within PayPal.
Are the merchants giving it to you, or are you just inferring it from the people?
No, we are basically inferring it when people make purchases, right?
Yeah.
So we have access to that kind of amount of data. So you have purchase intent, you have the catalog data, you have the actual kind of transaction data itself, and combine all of that with the social transactions in Venmo, with the data from PayPal, gives you a huge amount of kind of, again, what we call transaction data graph that we can now leverage for targeting. And we didn't even talk about measurement, right? If you think about it, we can also use the entire data pool to provide closed loop attribution back to our advertisers. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not only running ads on PayPal and Venmo, we are now also leveraging PMPs, right, to run campaigns offsite. So we can even run a CTV campaign and then measure the impact of CTV with the transaction graph for the advertiser.
So effectively, that's like an audience extension play, offsite marketing. Do you disclose who you work with for that?
On the SSP side, we're working with the Pragmatics and the Magnets of the world, and from there, you can make it available in any DSP.
Sounds like you should own a DSP.
1.5 years in, so let's see what happens next, right?
Yeah. So,
but you bring me to a really interesting point, which is.
I am unemployed as of.
We're in touch with Joe, indeed. But the interesting point about that is one of the cool things about PayPal is that as we're sitting across all the merchants, right, we can actually show advertisers not only how a single merchant is performing, but also how they are performing across all the merchants. aka we can show them market share analysis, and we can share with them how market share is actually evolving depending on how much money they spend and where they spend the money. And that's interesting because typically the conversation on the advertiser side starts with the CFO, not the CMO. The CFO is the first one who actually decides how much money the CMO is allowed to spend. And that is defined typically on what's the market share and what can I do to grow my market share and how much money do I need to spend to grow my market share, right? And so the first question is, what's the market share? How can I grow market share? And to answer that question, you need to sit across all the merchants, which is what we do. You can't just be one single merchant. So we can help to answer this question from a CFO's perspective. And then the second question is, once the CFO has decided how much to spend, he then gives the money to the CMO. The CMO of the agency is deploying the money. And then the question becomes about things like incrementality, right? And that's where we can, again, help because of the transaction data to then basically help the CMO, the agency, to decide where to basically best spend the money on which merchants.
Right. You sort of have it both ways in a way, because you can offer the brand, the manufacturer of the product, this insight into what retailers they're potentially reaching a consumer in, but then you actually take the affiliate fee from the retailer. All right.
Yeah, on the honey side.
On the honey
yeah,
side,
but we can even go to a merchant and say, from our knowledge, right? Do you think that you are kind of underinvested from a specific category or brand compared to what we see is happening on other merchant sites?
Right. And then of course, if the retailer is using one of your products for checkout, that's a different source of telemetry about what's going on, right?
So maybe to this point,
sure.
It's a really, really interesting point, because we have a lot of conversations right now with our merchants, which is basically, hey, if you basically implement PayPal, give us more presentment, it means we have actually more transaction data, which we can then leverage to help you to grow your retail media advertising business. Yeah. And so again, that's why we can not only help on how can we help merchants to sell more, we can also help merchants to make more money by improving their retail media business.
Right. It's also kind of a unique position, because if you think about your counterparts in the financial services world, the payment folks, they don't have as many chips on the table to play with, right? And various different strategies in the area. I want to turn the conversation to AI and Agentic, because that's actually in the title of our talk. We haven't talked about it yet. So what are you working on in the AI Agentic world? And also, I'm going to ask you what your vision is for the whole thing. You can take it in one, you can do one or the other first.
Maybe let's start with what we're doing right now, right? And a few things. So the first one is obviously, if you think about agentic commerce, it also means that we as a consumer, we need to get used to making purchase decisions in a very new environment. In an environment which we as consumers are not used to make such purchase decisions, where we eventually even outsource the decisioning to agents, which is actually pretty similar to 20 years ago when PayPal was created in the first place, where suddenly we were starting to basically make purchases online. And then you need someone you can trust if you actually make such a payment online, which was PayPal, right? PayPal was originally all about how can I make an online transaction with someone who actually I can trust and I can rely on. And fast forward to today, we are, I would say, in a very similar situation as consumers want to now make purchases in these kind of agentic environments. They still need to rely on someone who they can trust with their money. And hence, we are working now with all the agentic players to basically integrate PayPal and to provide that trust in this kind of agentic environment, so the consumers have as little kind of doubt that they now should actually spend in such new environments. That's the first one.
Okay.
And the second one is, in addition to the integration into these platforms, is how can we now actually even kind of expand the tooling or the tools or the utilities that are currently provided in commerce environments. And in many cases, what we see is right now from a consumer perspective, you might get a really strong recommendation on what you should actually purchase. Let's say you want to buy a new TV screen, right? You can go into an agentic environment, you get some recommendations, you should buy brand A or brand B. But actually making that purchase is still quite struggling for you. You need to then go to a merchant website, search for the same brand, and then eventually you buy outside of the commerce environment, at least as of today.
Sure.
And with Honey, right, we can basically collapse that process by giving the consumers the opportunity to basically, from almost within the agentic environment, make the purchase. And that obviously then is much easier from a consumer perspective, increases the conversion rate from a merchant perspective, increases the value for the agentic commerce provider. And so I think it's a win-win situation by leveraging what we have within PayPal, the catalog data, the relationship to merchants, the trusted kind of payment processing capabilities, and bring all of that together and basically kind of help to get agentic commerce to next level.
It seems like there's three parties, either two or three parties involved. There's the AI provider. The consumers are going to choose who they want to use. Then you have to have the products in the catalog, and then the third is you have to check out. And sometimes the second two are combined. We just saw, I think it was last week or the week before, there was news that OpenAI and Walmart were doing something, which I assume is both 2 and 3. Do you think that's going to continue, where the AI providers are going to have a bunch of partners to enable commerce?
I mean, the question is are these kind of commerce or agentic commerce provider, are they going into logistics, yes or no? Right? And if
Walmart is, but not everybody.
Again, but if the agentic commerce providers are not going into logistics, you obviously have to then partner with someone who can do your logistics, right? Which is what we've seen last week. And then the question again is, to your earlier point, you have to have someone who is doing the recommendation, what product to purchase. You have to have someone who's providing the logistics, and you have to have someone in between who's taking care of the payments and all of that. And that's, again, where we come into place and where we help to bring the other two parties together.
Right. And when we think about what we were talking about earlier, this long tail of merchants, they have no ability to do any of that, right? They just want to sell something, and they're seeing, I'm just putting words in your mouth, they're seeing AI as sort of a replacement for search. It's just another way to find the merchant, right? And they need that transaction to happen anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And again, to your point, right, they don't have access to what the big players have access to. And in that sense, by enabling them to participate in this game, right, and giving them some tools to do so, in a way, it's almost kind of helping to democratize a little bit the access to AI and the power of AI, the power of accessing retail media spending, monetizing eyeballs, all that. I think it's great to see how we are trying to balance a little bit so that we, at the end, don't just have a few kind of very big players and no one else helping the SMBs to thrive in this new kind of world.
Well, part of the way I framed the AI conversation, maybe you don't agree with, which was I was thinking you have a mainstream AI provider like OpenAI or Gemini, you search for products, and then someone like PayPal makes it happen. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's going to be the dominant model, or do you think people will go to, let's say, their Honey toolbar and use that for shopping entirely?
I guess they will do both, right? In many cases, they might actually go to one of the big players and then they have PayPal to do the rest. And then there may be more specialized use cases where they go to Honey, right? And everything happens with Honey. I don't see a world where you only have a universal agentic commerce provider for everything and anything. It's more likely you do in one, maybe 70% of your stuff, but then there's still 30% where you shop somewhere else. And that's where you then go into more the specialized players, such as Honey, right, who are then subject matter experts for a specific area.
Yeah, and despite Amazon's dominance, shopping is pretty fragmented. Google Shopping, all the other places. So we've been using actually the word agentic a little loosely. We've been sort of saying AI and agentic. Agentic technically is where an agent is doing stuff for you. And we've published at Marketecture a couple different articles on this subject. One that said, no, it's never going to happen. The other one is like, yeah, actually it might happen. How do you feel about this idea that a consumer is going to literally outsource some of their shopping to an agent?
I mean, we all don't know how much we will trust agents in the future, right? And if so, I'm sure we start with just the commodity products, right? Restocking my milk or whatever it may be, right? But if you really want to buy a new suit or so, we may still want to have the final decision, right?
Right. I'm not trusting an agent for.
I might assume that the agent is going to provide us recommendations, right? But at the end, the final decision maker, I'm sure, is still us, and hence, it's not just a rational decision; it's also a decision based on emotions. Trust, as we spoke earlier, is still going to play a big part, right? So.
It reminds me a little, maybe it's a weird metaphor, but Amazon had those buttons they were selling for a while where like if you ran out of Tide, you just had a Tide button and you'd press it, and it failed because like it just feels weird. People have sort of a lot of risk whenever they buy things. You know, they are conservative. So to close out, tell me what you think the world of commerce looks like, 5 years from now.
Wow, I guess 5 years, given how quickly we are moving, it feels like 50 years from now, right? But if you think about it, the question for me is actually less about what is going to change. It's more a question about what is actually not going to change. And I think that helps us much better to understand how the future is going to look like. And as we just spoke about, things like at the end, we make a lot of decisions ourselves. And as much as we talk about math in one of the sessions earlier, right? At the end, we're still human beings who haven't changed over the last, 200,000 years. So we make a lot of decisions with our gut, with emotions. and that won't change even if AI is around. And so the question is, how is the world going to look like where the humans are still the same, the AI might be different, and how are then decisions going to make? And I would argue that things like trust, things like the social connectivity between humans, as in Venmo, trust as in people, is not going to change in 3 or 5 years, because that's how we are hardwired, and it won't change. And maybe on the surface, yes, we use agent to help us making our life easier, to help us with kind of taking some friction out of the process. But when it really comes to us human beings, the interactions with each other, the trust and all of that, the emotions, I don't think that's going to change. And the question is, how can then brands find the right balance between enabling kind of a frictionless commerce while at the same time speaking to the emotions, the social connectivity of humans?
All right, that's pretty deep, and I think we'll end it there. So everyone give a really big hand to Dr. Mark Grether from PayPal.